Hello everyone! Welcome back to Dragon Videos. I hope y'all are doing well. So, for this list I have once pulled up again, many of you in the past had previously looked into some of my hated characters list. Steven in Steven Universe, in the Owl House. So yeah, there has been plenty of characters that we hate, and usually it's for good reason alone. So for this video, I thought to at least go over some of the top 10 most beloved characters in the Owl House series. What I mean by that is, I'm going to go over some of the most lovable Owl House characters that are loved because of their character traits, their design, or whatever their character arc has been going through. Bear in mind, there can be some spoilers in this, and there can be more to come later on, especially as we're winding down in terms of the Owl House Season 2 and going into Owl House Season 3. Without further ado, let's begin. Okay, before anyone gets mad at me, I put her at number 10, which is sort of a highest spot in this list, especially because I can't imagine how much hate she gotten just in one season, in the small presentation of one season alone. Yeah, I know I've been talking about her to death, as well as been doing a couple of videos about her ever since the folly days of Coven Parade, but can you blame me at this point? Well, so let me start from the top. In the first season, she didn't have a whole lot of screen time and definitely only became ominous conversations and some snippy setbacks that she would throw in as sly at Lilith whenever possible. So it was hard for me to really understand at that point of why she got so much hate in the fandom. Later on, though, she starts to become more desperate and paranoid, doing everything in her power to make things right in her favor, even again means getting rid of a golden guard. However,
she said if I don't make it back for the family reunion, I'd be banished from Palm Stings and the family home. But I failed too many missions, and if I leave my job now, I'll be banished from my life. There you go. It's gonna be okay.
holy cow! Never expected this sort of situation from the likes of her. Despite her crazy attitude, I actually feel bad about her, which is probably where some of the audiences start loving her because she's something close to a sympathetic villain. I mean, true, at the end of Folly's Day Parade, she chose the Emperor over her family, but considering this is the Emperor's coven we're talking about, who is known to have a very toxic relationships that relies on favoritism and such, it's understandable why she deserves a little sympathy and a bit of a hug. Even her design is well thought out. Yeah, this list does have some Owl House characters that people still hate, but aside from that certain thing, there's still a good reason why we should love Lilith, but it's usually because of her character arc. It's the beginning, she was definitely very brash and smooth, representing the cold side of the Emperor's coven, and was practically the first authority figure to represent that coven during Season 1. and she seemed to have a secret and somewhat difficult relationship with her sister Ida. It wasn't always like that, though. When they were kids, they were close as heck. They wanted to protect and care for each other whenever possible. Lilith would always try to make sure her sister was taken care of, and of course Ida tries to be there for her as well. These were practically very endearing sisters who tried everything in their power, until one day when the Emperor's Coven was ready for more recruits, Lilith was struggling with her magic, and unfortunately decided to use her curse on Ida. So ultimately, you can guess where this is going to go. And part of the reason why she did those things was because of her mommy issues, which got worse when she shared her curse with Ida. So yeah, it wasn't exactly a very pretty picture, and over time it does make us sympathize with Lilith for a bit. But thankfully she has been getting better, and towards the tail end of season 2, becoming this endearing, quirky dork who we can't help but love at that point. She still has her own issues, but at least with the writing, it's going into a decent direction. Now, her redemption arc may not be as perfect as some of us had hoped, but I do like of how her character is still set up as being very quirky and somewhat shy, very smart, and even as well as just a reflection to how cold and ruthless she used to be. But again, I like her change from being this ruthless to somewhat very dorky, but in a very fun way. Now, in the beginning of the series, I didn't exactly have very high opinions about Camila Noceda. She definitely didn't have an idea of how to help her daughter and decided to rely on a camp and help to make things better with Luz, which I'm pretty sure is going to have some negative consequences later on if we get to season 3 and how it may play a huge role in her growth. And for some time, it's understandable that with pilot episodes, not all the characters are going to be perfect. And Camila Noceda definitely shows that she cares about Luz as well as other beings as presented in here in Yesterday's Lie, going out for a way of saving V from that crazy lunatic of a historian, and thus trying nothing more than to have her daughter come back home safe and sound. But their interactions, well, didn't have a very positive turn, which gave us mixed feelings.
No. When you come home, promise you'll stay here. I didn't mean to push you away. I swear things will be different.
Mom, it's not you. It never was.
Promise me, Luz. Please.
Which is why I put her this further up on the list. We may not approve of some of her decisions, but she's not a terrible mom. She does care about Luz and does worry about her, as well as it does feel like she's caught up in her own problems and may not really understand what's going on with Luz's head more than she believes, but she still is one of the best moms in the Owl House thus far. Yeah, well, I previously mentioned of how Hootie was a bit number 5 in the hated characters list in the Owl House, mostly because he definitely came across as least favorable in season 1. He had his moments where he didn't take things too seriously, made some jokes that can be a little cringy at times, and up to the point where whenever he's in the scene, he becomes very annoying. However, he definitely becomes a little bit more endearing in season 2. His relationship with Lilith has improved and causing some form of redemption for her. As you can see, his relationship with her is very strong. And what even makes him more endearing is probably the one episode that was probably one of the biggest highlights ever, Knock Knock on Hootie's Door, where he went out of his way to help out the Owl House crew improve what they do best, helping King find his gifts in his abilities, Luz finally being able to confess her feelings for Amity, and of course, Ida confronting her past. And plus, he also has his moments where he fights. He actually fights well. He may be comic relief, but he definitely knows how to throw a solid punch that earns respect. So yeah, I'm doing a lot of callbacks for most of the Owl House characters that I have some dislike for, but they've gotten better in season 2. Principal Bump being one of them. So let me do a recap. In season 1,
A good witch needs to hocus focus. You can only pick one of the 9 tracks. And
So yeah, you could definitely say, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with having rules to follow, but sometimes they can be for a certain extent and sometimes questionable. Another thing that can make us really frustrated with Principal Bump was the fact that he didn't exactly stand up for Amity and just allowed Odalia to do whatever the hell she wanted and expel Gus, Willow, and Luz. I mean, seriously, she's not allowed to do that. I don't care how reputable the Blights are. They should not be doing this sort of thing. But here's one redeemable highlight that I thought seemed really impressive and probably allowed him to become a lovable character. Principal Bump really does care about the students, and man, can he show it.
Jim is off limits. Gray's orders.
Gray may be head witch, but I'm still principal. It'd be wise to let me through.
Oh, yeah?
So yeah, by the end of the day, he's a well-meaning principal who just wants to look out for his students, whatever way possible. Even though he had a tendency to stick to the rules maybe one too many times, as he shows some growth in the show, he definitely shows great potential of becoming a very good ally because he now sees of how messed up that the Coven system really is. So, like most of the Coven leaders, Darius started off as being an air of mystery. We didn't know exactly much about him until much later in Ida's Requiem. So, when he was first introduced, I did like his design and his somewhat suave attitude, but he definitely came off as very pompous and condescending, wanting nothing more than to have a little free time to himself. However, when it comes to being battle ready, he is no sleeper. When he's pissed, he's pissed. He will attack you without any regards for anything else, and he can fight back hard. Not only that, but he can definitely be very harsh around other people that he doesn't like, and he is not very unapologetic for it, as he was in any sport and any storm. He was definitely villain material, that's for sure.
And this is no way to treat the Emperor's
Nephew, I knew your predecessor. He was my mentor, one of the strongest witches I've ever known. But you...
However, he's not without his softer side. he definitely has a bit of a kinder soul, especially when it's seen toward Hunter, which is where he becomes a bit more of a beloved character in more ways than one.
Made me to protect them? I'm impressed. I dropped them off at Hexside. We have more than enough recruits, in my opinion.
Are you gonna tell Bellis about this?
Are you going to tell him about your secret palisman?
So later on we soon learn that Darius is part of a rebellion known as the Cats, and he definitely wants nothing more than to end Belos's Day of Unity. He really is a well thought out character, though he definitely deserves more screen time. It is very interesting of how he's set up and a great father figure for Hunter. Hopefully he can make things right with Alador at this point, as well as having a better relationship. Hopefully if they get out of this alive. Oh heck yes, I'm including Rain on this list. Ever since they appeared not only as the first ever non-binary character in Disney, but it was pretty interesting to see their relationship with Ida, and of course, how it all began.
I don't know who you are, but you are a riot. Don't worry, I didn't spit in it.
Ever since those two met, Rain had been a very adorable and loving character, as well as Ida's soulmate. Rain is head of a Bard coven and tried to run the rebellion, and still did in secret, which was a risky gambit considering they had to deal with Terra Snapdragon, who's not very sane. But anyway, Rain wants nothing more than to keep Ida out of trouble, which didn't last too long by the time that the episode 18, O Titan, Where Art Thou, comes into play, thus resulting in the most interesting dynamics we never thought were possible. But still, Rain definitely helps flesh out more of Ida's character, and their relationship with Ida is just so dang cute and endearing. But they also have a good shoulder on their heads and come up with very good plans and strategies whenever need to do so. I mean, even this scene alone just shows how much they respect and care for Ida. It's even just... I just swear these two need to marry each other after the season 2 and season 3 finales. Let's just see that happen, ladies and gentlemen, please. So Augustus Porter, or Gus as we all like to call him, definitely had a few amount of screen time in season 1, basically being very charismatic, very smart, ahead of his class, as well as being a very professional illusionist. But he is now without his own insecurities. He got in trouble in the Something Ventured, Something Framed because he got reckless and wanted nothing more than to prove humans because he wanted to be leader. But more of his character and his more positive qualities of helping others really stands out in Labyrinth Runners, where basically he realized that Adrian Gray was gonna play them all and put sigils on them on the Day of Unity, thus reacting to the draining spell. And to top it all off, he would go as far as destroying Adrian Gray, resulting in a major mind melt that Adrian Gray definitely deserved. It's by then that it's in these moments, along with the Looking Glass ruins, where we have more respect for Gus and his abilities for using illusion magic. They do come in very handy, more than he gives himself credit for, and he just is one of those really relatable characters, which is why he earns so much love. Relatable as well as skilled, Gus is practically one of the best characters in this series that definitely deserves a lot more screen time than we have in a very long time. So, Willow started off as a very shy and reserved character, always being bullied by Basha and Amity, and also being belittled for inability to handle certain magics, considering a half a witch. To make matters worse, we learn of how Amity and Willow used to be friends, and then they had the ultimate fallout on Amity's birthday. Probably the worst birthday in memory. And it's also by then that Willow is understandably angry and loathes herself more than normal. So of course it makes sense. But over time, though, she starts to grow more confident in her skills as a plant magic user, as well as having healthier relationships with Luz and Gus, and over time, learning to forgive Amity for the stuff that she's been through. So it definitely shows of how much she's such a lovable character. Ever since she's had her confidence, she's shown that she's stronger than most people give credit for, and it shows. Even Hunter begins respecting her in time. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons to love this character and how much she's just grown as a person, even in the short amount of screen time that she had. Let's just see how it is in the season finale. In the beginning, Hunter was known as the Golden Guard, a mysterious figure hiding in the shadows and had a certain amount of authority that he's not afraid to use his bulk around whenever possible, but tries to play fair. What makes it even more interesting is that he's the nephew of Emperor Belos. And things take a very interesting turn by the time we enter Hunting Talisman, where his mask is finally knocked off and Luz sees him as a person that has now being stripped away and has a little bit of identity issues going on. To make matters worse,
While magic did this to you, I might be able to find out. My apologies. I spoke out of turn. It won't happen again.
holy cow, this boy has been through so much pain by this guy, practically abused left and right. However, Hunter has an eagerness to learn about magic and how it works. It definitely clinks up, but not only that, but he's painfully socially awkward. What I mean by that is, when you get to any sport in any storm, he has trouble interacting with other people in a more better light, and he only knows rules and authority because he's been doing that sort of stuff for years. And to make sure that the pain cherry on top, aside from getting the disrespect from people like Luz, Ida, Amity, as well as a little bit of Darius, he also gets into some interesting trouble with Belos, not only for being reprimanded for unable to get the talismans, but also for getting the Eclipse key, the Titan's key, without his permission. It's also by then that we also begin to love Hunter more as the series progresses. He's very level-headed, he can think of a strategy as well as just try to put a situation in a more realistic perspective, even though it can be a dangerous gambit. Things get even more insane when all the theories about whether or not Hunter is a Grimwalker gets confirmed, and we get into a major level of shell shock as he is. Not only was he living a horrible lie, but now he's dealing with an existential crisis that he is something entirely different, neither witch nor human, and now he has to deal with those sorts of concepts. Not much, in a lot of ways, Hunter has grown so much as a character, going from barely noticed in the beginning of season 2 to practically lovable and deserving a huge hug and sympathy and a whole boatload of therapy at the end of season 2. I mean, that boy has been through so much and he just deserves so much love. But there are still others that are just as deserving. Oh yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am starting off with the Owl House Trio, and King of the Demons is the next one up on this list. He is very adorable, fluffy, and has a tendency to be a little bit cat-like at times. King in the beginning came off as a little bit of a crazy power-hungry little monster, wanting nothing more than to be proclaimed as the King of Demons, being respected and taken seriously by everyone. He definitely has his softer moments of being vulnerable, and of course, in some cases, he can be a bit of a voice of reason at times if some of you had watched my thoughts on the Owl House characters. The reason why I say that is because when King gets serious about something, he really knows how to get through to people. For example, when he told Ida that she's gonna lose in the future, it would be a different story. And then things take a heartbreaking turn when he learns the truth of where he came from. Turns out, King was actually a baby when Ida found him, just nothing more than being protected by Jean-Luc, the gooey golem thing that would attack him within perimeters. Just when things couldn't get any crazier, we soon learn that he's actually a Titan, a huge demon-like creature that has wandered all the Boiling Isles and has become part of it from the get-go, which definitely makes him a huge target on his back, and definitely a boatload of irony. Things get even more crazy when he starts to learn more about his powers and what he can do with them, like his sonic roar, for example. King is really an endearing character, and you grow to love him more as the series progresses. He's starting to learn to be a bit more modest about himself, and he really cares about others at times. And again, he can be a pretty good voice of reason when the situation calls for it. So kudos to the Owl House crew to at least give that solid example. Yes, the Owl Lady. In the beginning, I didn't exactly have some very high opinions of her. I was a bit doubtful because she was using Luz for most of her dirty work and barely taught her any magic whatsoever. Yeah, but I mean, who wouldn't be concerned about some random stranger who's using kids for dirty work? But when we learn about Ida's curse and what happened on the day of the exam, we definitely learn that there's more to Ida at a young age. There's more to her than the eye. While she struggles and comes to terms with her curse, Ida soon learns of how to deal with literal demons of her past, and wanting nothing more than to overcome those difficulties that lay on it. It makes her a very strong and endearing character, which is why we all love about her. Even by then, she was a good sense of justice. After all, she called out to her Snapdragon for being crazy when they had to do this death game maze. And to top it all off, she becomes the great mom figure that Luz needed in her life, which definitely shows of how much she's changed from a somewhat selfish character to someone who will do everything in her power, even risk her freedom, to protect her adoptive family from the hands of Belos. Even by then, Ida becomes a more respectable character. Now, she has a great sense of justice and doesn't like oppression of any sort, even from fellow witches that are total strangers to her. Oh my god, I will say this multiple times, Amity really has come far in her character arc. In the beginning of the series, she came off as like your stereotypical mean girl with a lot of brains and devoted to studying. Over time, when you get through convention and lost in language, she starts to soften up towards Luz a little bit more and becomes a little bit of a character that we begin to sympathize with. I mean, heck, by the time you reach understanding Willow, her situations are pretty heartbreaking because she was tossed into a very unfair situation, mostly created by Odalia, to either give up her friendship with Willow or Willow never goes to Hexside. Yeah, she's practically used as a doll and a puppet to be by her own mother. Yeah, thanks a lot, Odalia. Thanks for treating your daughter like a freaking dog. To make matters worse, she has issues with trying to stand up for herself and allowing Luz to be expelled from Hexside, which again makes things go a little too far. But she begins to grow more as a character, and we find her expressing more of herself freely and breaking free from the oppression that was placed on her by her own family. And even her relationship with Luz is so improved from enemy to friend to lover. Amity is a very protective and caring individual that we can't help but salute. Oh heck yes, I wanted to make her number one on this list, and many of you can understand why. In the beginning of the show, she was a bit reckless with what she does. Snakes, spiders, fireworks. So yeah, she kind of ended up in a lot of trouble. But when she went to the demon realm, she matured a lot, thinking more carefully on her decisions as well as what to do next. And over time, she also learned of how to do magic, despite not having a bile sac, which is normal anatomy for witches. And along the way, she's able to make new friends. And that's not only because of her quirky behavior, but she has great empathy, paying attention to everyone else's problems and knowing what they need out of the deal in more ways than one. Heck, even the enemies need a good hug from her.
She said if I don't make it back for the family reunion, I'd be banished from home stings and the family home. But I failed too many missions, and if I leave my job now, I'll
She's my chance to be someone. Do you know what it's like to have no one take you seriously?
So yeah, despite of how confident and happy she is, Luz definitely has a lot of issues she's going through, not only for the current trauma she's facing in the Boiling Isles, but her own past that has dealt with a lot of insecurities because of that. But it's not going to stop her to make things right, and it's pretty high reasons why we love her. She's relatable, she's the first ever bisexual main character of a show, as well as part of the Latina community, so she definitely is a very lovable triple threat that we can all relate to in terms of being socially awkward, but in a good way. So in a lot of ways, Luz, we salute you. And that's it, folks. That's all that I have for this video. Who are some of the characters that you love? Remember to do a comment below, subscribe and do a like, and well, brace yourselves for the season 2 finale of the Owl House. So long, everyone. This is Dragon Videos signing off.